Hey Fruit Faces, it is Claire Bear here, and I would like to talk to you today about something very, very important, kind of a cause that is becoming nearer and dearer to my heart the more and more I learn. Now, being a person, I just want to have a little disclaimer here, being a person who has had a history of some disordered eating, I never would have really thought that I would be going around saying things like, I don't agree with the fat acceptance movement, and that I think, that being skinny is healthier. But that is exactly what I'm going to say in this video, and I'm going to kind of let you know exactly why I think this and exactly why I try to keep my body at a very low weight. Yes, I think that being skinny is healthier. I think that most of the time people are taught when they talk about these things, people are really focused on BMI. And BMI is very, very crude. I've talked about this before. It's just very, very limited. It's actually wrong, I think, for about at least 18 to 20% of Americans, at least. It's just wrong. It doesn't account for a lot of different things. It doesn't account for muscle tone. And I think it messes up when you get like too tall or too short. And so you have big bodybuilders who are being classified as obese and all this different stuff. So it's very, very crude. It's very, very limited. And therefore, why do we base what we think is healthy off of it as far as our weight goes? Well, we shouldn't. We should stop doing this. I know my mom, for one, she's like checking out how much we weigh, like me and my sons, because we weigh about the same. They actually overtake me. They weigh a little bit more now. Well, one of them does. So she's looking and she once says to me, oh, you guys are getting close to being underweight. You better watch out. Like it's a big deal if I go like a little bit under. And I think that's kind of the mindset that people are getting kind of sucked into. I think that it's definitely happening, and it's definitely something to stop and take a look at, because right now, what is it, about 70% of people are overweight or obese in this country, in the United States. And I think, most of the other developing countries are pretty much the same, although America seems to have a little bit worse health. We get more vaccines. We're at the top of all those things you don't want to be at. TV, hours, fast food, all that stuff. We're doing that stuff more than anybody else. Basically, what I'm going to talk about with you guys is like why this is so, inaccurate. Well, we're not going to necessarily talk about why. We're going to talk about what's better. Waist circumference is way better. It's way more accurate, especially when you're looking at height. If you take in the height, if you just look at, waist circumference, it's probably going to be better than BMI in general anyway. A lot of people say, you should not have a waist circumference of above 35 inches. And that pretty much anyone, I think, with a waist above 35 inches is going to be overweight, and that it's unhealthy, and that you have a very high risk of mortality at that point. And if you go up even further, above 43.5 is like even worse. Okay, very, very high risk of problems. Where do we go from here? We cut out the meat, we cut out the dairy, we exercise, and we lose weight. But when people are, being told actually not only that it's, okay to be overweight, it's beautiful to be overweight, fat is beautiful, but they're actually being told, there's articles, plenty of articles out in supposed studies out on the internet talking about how it's actually healthier to be overweight than it is to be underweight. And they cite handpicked studies, of course, and I just have to say this is total fucking bullshit. Okay, you can't just cherry pick one study when it comes to this. There's a lot of different studies that have been done in a lot of different parts of the world by different organizations, you guessed it. And there are a few that say that that's better, but most of them, when you compare, even the BMI ones, will clearly show that it's better to be on the lower side than it is on the higher side. you have to look at like not only the different studies, but like what they're actually studying. Sometimes people are studying healthcare costs. Sometimes people are studying heart disease, cancer, or sometimes they're just studying all cause mortality. And then sometimes you got to be careful because they look at people who are screened for cancer before. Are you screened for cancer after? Are you screening for smoking? Are you controlling for smoking, and other things? Are you screening for all of these different things? And that's where a lot of our results get messed up. And when you look at, usually there's a reason, to cause somebody to be extremely underweight, like 15, BMI or something like that. So really those studies should encompass all of those things: drug use, smoking, alcohol, like everything, like just mental problems in general. So that you can accurately, compare what you're talking about. And again, when you look at different studies, like this one, there's one about heart disease. Heart disease is actually lowest from at a lower BMI. And so even certain BMI studies can show us that a lower weight, and even being, God forbid, underweight a little bit is actually better than the alternatives. But again, usually you're having a J curve. Usually it says that, from 15 to 18.5 BMI is going to be your bottom hook of the J. But if you look closely, and they say that that's your risk, if you look closely, and again, different studies say different things: heart disease, cancer. I think for heart disease, it's way, way higher for overweight and obese. Your risk of heart disease is way higher. But for cancer, things are a little bit different, because when you're going through cancer, you want a little bit of weight on you, I guess, to get through chemo and, avoid wasting away, sort of thing. So, and again, sometimes it's different for different age groups. So that's yet another factor to kind of sort out and find out, in my age group, is it, before you go around just saying flat out like it's better to be overweight than it is to be underweight, then, look at your age group and make sure that that's true. And again, medical expenditures usually show across the board when, as opposed to like all cause mortality, that people are spending less on their medical bills, having to go to the hospital less if they're underweight as opposed to overweight. But again, I want to talk about this J curve a little bit. The bottom of the J curve is usually, it's lower than the top curve. So being overweight is obviously worse, but also you got to look at that little portion. I mean, they're usually, the dot and where they're locating it and the information is on a single point. It's on, 19 BMI, 20 BMI. It's like right there on a level. But when you go down to that part of the J curve, a lot of times they're lumping in people that are just under 18.5. 18, they just lump them all together. If you're 13 BMI, if you're 14, 15, 16 BMI is being, shown on the same number as a higher BMI that would be close, 18, 17.5, something like that. So the best studies are ones that don't do that. And when the studies don't do that, we can clearly see that it continues, and that being a little bit underweight is better than being overweight of any kind. So it's all about your levels. And you can see clearly from, different, guidelines that, there are different levels of being underweight, and being mildly underweight is obviously better than being, severely underweight. So lumping people all together into this underweight category is kind of ridiculous. And in fact, even, if you have a body weight BMI of under 17.5, some doctors will even automatically classify you as anorexic, even though that's not what anorexia is or means. And it totally discounts everything. And it discounts all these natural reasons why you could be underweight. And that is kind of helps people get this mentality of, oh my God, you're skinny. That's a horrible thing. So I think we really need to be careful about that, especially when the epidemic is that we're going towards obesity in greater numbers than ever before. By 2020, we are looking at, here in America, 70 to 80%. I mean, we're already at 70, you're looking at 80%. By 2050, we might have 100% of people, close to 100%. If the trends stay the same, it's going to be close to 100% of people that are overweight or obese in this country. So those are insane statistics. Heart disease is the number one killer here by far, and it's clearly related, as are most of your chronic diseases, diabetes and things like that as well, and cancer. All are not helped by being overweight. So obvious to people, but this information and these spins that people come with, and when you read these articles, oh, being overweight is actually better than being underweight. Well, again, look at the risk that you're talking about. You can go through and just compare the severity of the different diseases and the prevalence of the different diseases, and it all matters. It should all be taken into consideration. So again, there's different info for chronic aging disease, diabetes, cancer, and a lot of it says a lot of different things. One of the things I urge us to do is to look very carefully at this, very, very carefully at this little J curve that we have going on. Because if you look at these certain different studies, and you hear people saying this, it's an outright lie, because you can very clearly draw the line across and compare for yourself with your own brain, and your own two eyes, how the levels compared to being overweight.
So again, remember that these are lumping in 15 and under BMIs with 18 BMIs, and so they're invalid already. But when you look at them, you can very clearly see that as soon as you get to that overweight category, you are over the risk for being underweight. So there's no fact to that statement that overweight people are healthier than underweight people. And even if you look at this study right here, you can see that even extremely underweight people can be healthier clearly than overweight people. You can see there in the blue section, the aqua section in the middle, you have people that are still not considered overweight. Again, overweight is 30 and over, so these people you're looking at maybe like a 28 BMI, 29, still considered healthy, and people are trying to say that they're healthier at that weight than they are at a lower weight. No, that would be a falsehood. And again, if these studies, if these graphs were done correctly, with each factor given and not lumped all together, everybody under 18.4, then you would see a very clear trend where we wouldn't be having this argument at all. Being a little bit underweight is definitely healthier than being even close to overweight. And here's another one where you can clearly see that even at the lowest portion here of being underweight that they have included on this graph, you can see that it goes up to about 28 or so BMI, 28, 29 BMI. So the healthy is still having a higher risk than underweight. It's messed up.
So whereas people are saying, look, there's this J curve. It's so dangerous to be underweight because see this little J curve edge over here? Like, oh my gosh, don't get underweight. It's dangerous. It's unhealthy. Well, first of all, it's not necessarily unhealthy, okay, to be a little bit underweight. Not necessarily, unhealthy to be super underweight, actually. It just raises your risk factors. And when you look at the risk factors, when you actually read the articles that are talking about underweight people, they're usually just talking about anorexia and people who aren't taking in enough nutrients. They talk about bone density getting, going really down. And those are like your real main risks that you really actually have to deal with, okay? Like I said, this is not just about BMI. We're talking also about the waist and how important it is to have a good height to weight ratio. And just circumference. There's different studies that I've seen, and the thing is when you look at this way, the more accurate way, there is no J curve, okay? There's no J curve. You can really see. And whenever you look at it that way, it's completely different and it goes straight up like a line. And the bigger you are, the worse off you're going to be, the more you're going to spend on your health bills, the earlier you're going to die, yada, yada, yada. So, and like I said, that really kind of accounts more for an accurate representation because you're not just lumping people who are 15.5 BMI with people who are 18.3 BMI, if you know what I mean. You're taking a very precise measurement of somebody's waist and saying this is where their risk is at. So it's just you can take a much closer and better look when you do that. So I think that's really all kind of I wanted to share with you today. I might do some follow-up videos on this, so let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Not trying to fat shame anyone, not trying to make anyone feel bad. I know we've got too much of that in our society already, but I definitely think that this is something that people need to take seriously because I'm sick of seeing people come down with cancer and heart disease. I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of hearing that's the number one killer when it's completely fucking preventable with a plant-based, low-fat diet. If you haven't seen Forks Over Knives, if you haven't seen Plant Pure Nation, these are two videos just off the top of my head that really show that people are, and I think you can see these on Netflix, that people are actually healing heart disease, diabetes, different things by going on a plant-based diet. In another 20 years, guys, there's going to be there should be no, unless it's still covered up by stupid, disinformation, there's going to be no, doubt about it because we're having more and more evidence in controlled trials in real people's lives, real documentation that people are absolutely reversing heart disease at an extreme rate.